Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the WM32 Football Podcast. My name is Nelson. I am your host for today, and today we will be focusing on Sheffield United and Chris Wilder. The curious case of Sheffield United today. We are trying to figure out what has happened with them. And before we get started, I'd like to also remind you to please follow our social medias on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, also TikTok as well. And don't forget, the WM32 Football Shop has just gone live as well. So feel free to, if you want any merchandise, as you can see, Wes is showcasing right now, feel free to go on WM32football.com/shop. So the episode today, we'll be talking about Chris Wilder and Sheffield United. They currently sit bottom of the league with 5 points, 11 points off of Burnley, who are 18th right now. We all know last season they finished ninth and exceeded expectations, many expectations, when they got promoted from the Championship and finished with 54 points. You can even argue that they were even competing for the Europa League spot consistently last year. But now they sit bottom. Chris Wilder's current contract ends in 2024. And we're all wondering what sort of happened with Sheffield United this season. So, Wes, to get started, what's been your current assessment of Sheffield United season?
Sheffield United this season, they've been a little bit. Obviously, we know that they're not performing perhaps to the levels that they set themselves last season. But I think you could. There's an argument there that Sheffield United season last season was a bit of a freak. I don't think anybody expected them to finish, not even in the top half. I think 17th was probably, and below was probably where people saw them. So are they actually sort of where they are in terms of where they should be? Perhaps. I just think that everybody takes what they did last season, and obviously, yes, as a football club, and as a team, and everything like that, you want to build on it. But yeah, I think in games this season, they've not looked anywhere near like the side that we kind of knew from last season. A lot of people fell in love with it, with Sheffield United and with Chris Wilder, myself included. So yeah, it's been difficult for them, but I think they're not as clinical at the top end of the pitch anymore. I think Mousse being in and out of the side has been a massive miss for them. But then you add to that as well, obviously Dean Henderson going back to Manchester United, and Jack O'Connell being out for literally like the whole season. I think that those two players, I think more so than Mousse, have definitely, I wouldn't say killed Sheffield United, but it's definitely upset the rhythm of Sheffield United so far this season. But I think a lot of the time they are in games, they're just not taking those big moments that sort of come their way. Where last season they might nick a goal where they're under the cosh, or the goalkeeper might make a save in a big moment, or make a big save where whereby you think, oh no, here we go, you're going to concede, and they're under the cosh a little bit, and Henderson would pull out a save, or one of the back three would make a really big tackle at a crucial time in game. So I think those moments have gone against Sheffield United this season.
And obviously, with Chris Wilder being their manager, for those of you who don't know, he's had a meteoric rise to get to where he is today as Sheffield United manager. So, for those who don't know, had stints started at Bury, and then had stints at Oxford, Northampton, and then moving on to Sheffield United. So, Wes, I wanted to get your opinion, especially focusing on Chris Wilder. What do you think about his rise to the top, with he being Sheffield United manager today?
I think his rise is really, really refreshing. Literally, coming through like Drake with this one, started from the bottom, and now he's here at the top in the Premier League. I loved his interviews last season. His interviews were really, really refreshing for me. I think back to they lost against Liverpool. I think it was a lunchtime kickoff and Henderson dropped a bit of a clanger, really. There's a shot that 9 times out of 10, or even 9.5 out of 10 times, a goalkeeper saves it. It's just gone under Henderson, and I think everybody's then expecting the manager to come out and almost protect and defend the player. Wilder called him out and said, look, if he wants to play for England, he's got to cut that kind of mistake out of his game. And I thought, do you know what? Fair play, because he is right. And I think a lot of people then were questioning Chris Wilder, going like, oh, should he be doing that? Could that go against him and things like that? But, Henderson then went on to, become a bit of a mainstay in that Sheffield United side, and his form improved actually off the back of that. I think Chris Wilder done a fantastic job at Northampton. Obviously a club that's not a million miles away from where I live, and stuff like that, because I know for a fact he didn't have any money. Like, he didn't have anything, no money at all, like I said, to spend on players. Reports that players weren't even getting paid on time, or not even getting paid at all. And then he got them promoted. How? The club, Northampton, were literally in administration, and he got them promoted. Like, that takes some doing, just in itself. Again, he did quite well at Oxford as well, with the way that they played at that time. And then obviously he left, and then I think Michael Appleton came in, and then really built on what Wilder did, and took Oxford to get, I believe, onto that next level. But it's quite interesting, because when he went in at Sheffield United, it wasn't all plain sailing to begin with. He did struggle initially, and obviously Sheffield United is his club. Like, he's been a fan, he's been in the stands, and everything like that. So it's one of those, he's got an emotional attachment to the football club as well. So when they win, the highs are greater, but when they lose, the lows are again even greater, because he feels it a bit more. It hurts him, because obviously it's his club. He's then, like I say, in League One with Sheffield United, things weren't going swimmingly well. But what I liked was he recognised that things weren't going well, and changed and adapted. And then, he went to that back three that we've become accustomed to seeing Sheffield United play in. I think he still believes in that now. He's at a point, he's at a crossroads, I think, Chris Wilder. Does he carry on playing with this back three that's served him so well, or does he change and then perhaps go to a back four, get some width higher up the pitch, perhaps with a couple of wingers, and does he look at perhaps changing things that way from a tactical perspective? But I think in games he's switched a little bit this season. He's started with a back three. I think there was a time in the game on Sunday against Tottenham where he actually went a bit more 4-4-2 by the looks of it. So yeah, he is one to adapt and change. Just like I say, I think at the minute he's just at a bit of a crossroads, and stuff. So hopefully that will sort itself out. And I hope that Sheffield United do stick with him. We've seen a case of a club sticking by a manager even when they got relegated, and it's come good with Sean Dyche at Burnley. They got into the Premier League, went down, and then literally just rebuilt and have come back up, and have been in the Premier League a good few years now, and then gradually every year just built on what they've got at the minute. I know they're down there again at the minute, Burnley, but I don't think there's anybody here that kind of goes, well, Burnley are in trouble. Burnley are in a relegation dogfight, or they're going to go down, because I just think people kind of go, well, it's Burnley, like they'll get through it, type of thing. So yeah, I hope that Sheffield United do stay with Chris Wilder, because I do think he's a good manager.
One of the key words that I heard you say was refreshing. How Sheffield United and Chris Wilder, especially last season, were very refreshing. And you also mentioned about his flexibility of being tactical. And we all know that Chris Wilder, he sticks with a 3-5-2. with the overlapping centre backs, trying to create a numerical superiority when in that attacking third. You being a coach yourself, what are some of the strengths and weaknesses you've seen in Chris Wilder's in his managerial career?
I think overlapping centre backs. Who'd have thought it? By the way, especially in a back three. I remember watching them at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last season. It actually turned out to be Pochettino's last Premier League game in charge of Tottenham. Sheffield United outplayed us that day. Like, I could not believe what I saw. When you play with a back three, or you play with wing backs, or like back three, back five, however you want to call it, usually you would sacrifice something out wide. And you'd anticipate that you'd get done 2v1s in the wide areas, but you would have the numbers in the middle part of the pitch to sort of deal with any crosses that do come in. I didn't see that with Sheffield United last season. It was ridiculous. They were the ones that were creating the overloads in the wider areas. And I'm sitting there scratching my head going, wait, this isn't right. But it's because of those overlapping centre halves. I mentioned before about O'Connell being out, and I think he's been a massive, massive miss. If I look at how Sheffield United build up from the back, they've not had because O'Connell's left-footed, so naturally when he gets the ball, his first touch with his left foot, he takes it forwards and then he's progressing up the pitch. But because they haven't found anybody that is similar to Jack O'Connell, they're playing a right-footed player on the left side. So naturally, okay, their first touch is with their left foot, but then their second touch is naturally going to bring them inside onto their stronger foot. Whereas with O'Connell, like I say, ball comes over, he takes his first touch with his left foot. Right, now we're progressing up the pitch. And because he's quite good on the ball as well, he can play a pass, but then he's also got that license to get forward. So, yeah, I think O'Connell's been a massive miss, as I say, because he gives that balance, not only for the team, but in the structure and the way they play. And I think if you are going to play with a back three, you have to have that left-sided centre-back as a left footer for me, just because, like I say, it gives that balance for the team and for the structure, especially in that building up phase. But the thing with Sheffield United is their back five all came from League One, so it's strange. Like, okay, so essentially it's a League One back five. Obviously now they've turned into, half decent Premier League players that if Sheffield United were to go down, you would think that some of them might get a move unless they really wanted to stay. But that back five was with Chris Wilder and Sheffield United in League One. So actually, them being bottom of the Premier League, should we be surprised? Probably not. But because of how they played last year, it's a bit more of a surprise to us all, especially before Project Restart. I know they struggled a little bit when they came back, saying that they did tear Tottenham apart, much to my disgust. But yeah, I think that overlapping centre-back thing that they had going, if you like, or that niche is now gone. I think teams have worked out how to play against Sheffield United. And I think because you see more teams now go into a back three or a back five, it's a bit more like opposition know how to deal with it because they've got, another couple of teams to reference. For example, if you're doing like opposition analysis on Sheffield United and you wanted some similarities, you might look at Wolves and see how they set up and the similarities there. But yeah, I just think with O'Connell missing, it's killed them massively. So I'm not saying Jack O'Connell should be, lauded as one of the best centre backs in the league, or he needs a call up for England, or with a name like O'Connell, I'm sure he's probably got some Irish heritage in there as well. Yeah. But yeah, I just think he's been integral to what Sheffield United have done, and they've missed him massively, and because he's almost because he's a defender, like a centre back. His first instance as well is, well, can I defend? Whereas at the minute, I think they're playing Ampadu. I know they certainly played Ampadu on Sunday. Whereas, okay, yes, he's on loan from Chelsea, but I think Ampadu's makeup is slightly different. Like O'Connell's quite aggressive as a centre half. I think Ampadu's quite nice, and Ampadu needs that other centre back to go and lead, whereas O'Connell was that centre half. So you change that dynamic, and all of a sudden, instead of, for example, if it's Harry Kane, he's thinking, "Oh, blimey, I've got Jack O'Connell here. I know he's going to leave one in on me the first couple of times." Whereas Ampadu, like I say, he's probably a nice defender to play against. Like you could ruffle him up a little bit. He's not going to give too much back. But then seeing Ampadu at Leipzig, he was playing in the middle of a back three. I know he didn't play too much, but when he did play, it was in the middle. Massive difference in terms of playing as a middle centre half, as almost like a sweeper, and playing as an outer centre half. As an outer centre back, you've got to be comfortable to go out into those wider areas and deal with those 1v1 situations. And I think O'Connell and even Basham have been, comfortable to do that, especially. Over like when I look at last season, even in the Championship, they were happy to go out wide, deal with it, wait and hold that player up that has drifted out wide, and then wait for those wing backs to come in, and then they double up that way. But it's just not happened for them so far this season.
You mentioned, because like I think Jack O'Connell's name, I think was ringing throughout that.
Yes, it was.
That
Yeah,
kind of, yeah, and obviously I asked about sort of strengths and weaknesses, and we know there's a lot of factors that have affected Sheffield United's performance. And everyone could argue it's the second season syndrome, that sort of thing. But one thing I want to focus on, as you mentioned, Jack O'Connell, because you mentioned that whole back five was part of League One, was in that League One side. Chris Wilder was appointed in 2016 when they were back in League One, and they've pretty much, I think this is his 5th year in charge, and they've risen up with him. Like they've risen up as he's risen up as well. So one of the factors that I want to talk about that may, have affected Sheffield United this season is recruitment. So talk to me.
Here we go. This will be fun. This will be fun.
Yeah, talk to me about Sheffield's recruitment, because, like you said, he stuck with that back five for pretty much, you say, 5 years, and I think you mentioned at one point they haven't been able to find another player like Jack O'Connell. So why do you think? And if I give other examples like Aston Villa, they got promoted with Sheffield last year, and with their recruitment now, they're in the top half of the table. So talk to me about Sheffield United recruitment. The floor's yours.
I was hoping something like this would come up. Right, let's look at Villa before I go off on one on Sheffield United. Villa last season actually basically brought in a whole new squad. They let a lot go. I think they let good, looking into double figures at least, but they had a lot of experience that they let go as well. They had Jedinak, Glenn Whelan, players of that experience that you would think, right, we're going into the Premier League, we might need these experienced heads just to, see us out in a sticky patch. Villa literally hooked a lot of players, and then they supplemented it by buying a lot of younger players, a few players that they had on loan. Obviously brought in Tyrone Mings, El Ghazi, players that they knew as well. So yeah, Villa's recruitment at that time, I guess, is slightly different to Sheffield United's, because Villa did it last season and now they're reaping the rewards. So Villa now are getting the best out of, say, a Douglas Luiz or Ezri Konza, and players like that, but they've had them for 12 months previously. And if you look at Villa last season, they nearly went down. So Villa spent 100 million, and everybody thought, are they going to do another Fulham? Spend 100 odd million and go down. That kind of thing. But I think Villa now are just reaping the rewards. It's like, right, we've done the majority of our recruitment last season. This season, it's just about, okay, tweaking it here and there. So that's why you see an Emi Martinez that's come in. Obviously, last season they brought in Tom Heaton from Burnley, but he got a major injury, and then they brought Pepe Reina in on loan just to cover. And then, like I say, they've brought in Martinez this year. They've brought in Matty Cash at right back, who's been brilliant for Villa. They call him the star man on the right. and stuff. Ross Barkley on loan, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, what a signing that is!" Obviously, Wesley, another signing that they came in. Great first name, by the way. But he had an injury, and then they've brought in Ollie Watkins this season because obviously Wesley wasn't 100% fit. So, like I say, it was just about little tweaks with Villa. So I think, like I say, they're reaping the rewards of their recruitment over the last 2 years, if you like, or 18 months as we're at this stage. Right, Sheffield United, here we go. By and large, their recruitment over the last 18 months has been shocking. It's been awful. Okay, they came up. I understood some signings, to give you different options, like Luke Freeman last year, was a baller in the Championship. One of the most creative players, I think, in that division. Goes to Sheffield United and you think, okay, right, if the game's tight, we can bring him on, he can unlock a door, things like that. Didn't get a look in. So you're like, okay, bit strange. Then they brought in, obviously, Henderson back on loan. Massive part of what they were trying to do. Obviously, he was with them in the Championship as well. They brought in Jack Rodwell on a free, I think, this time last year. Interesting, considering Jack Rodwell had been out the game for a little while. Jagielka, could see that the logic behind it. Experienced head, again, just to get them through any sort of sticky periods. A decent defender in his day, Phil Jagielka. Obviously, I think he's there literally just to supplement what they've got because he doesn't play too much. They brought in Sander Berger last year, and I was like, what a signing this is. How Sander Berger has ended up at Sheffield United, I don't think anybody knows. All you Football Manager players out there will know that Sander Berger is different quality. Like, he's different class. So that was the real statement signing of Sheffield United's time last season, Sander Berger. And I was thinking, mate, I'd be on the phone. I'd want another agent, to be honest, because Sander Berger had the pick of some of Europe's elite clubs. He was touted about that much, and he's ended up at Sheffield United. So it's a real coup for the club. If they do go down, you'd probably anticipate that they'd definitely get their money back and then some on him. He could quite easily play, in Europe, in a European competition for anybody. Then they bought in Restos on loan from Leverkusen. Didn't play, barely got a look in. So it's strange for Sheffield United, I think, last season, because they tried to do some bits and it just didn't quite work. So they bought Mousse last year that worked a lot for them, scored a lot of goals. Obviously this year's not played too much. I think he's been injured quite a bit. McBurney, good sort of Championship striker at the time, bagged a lot of goals at Swansea. So I think Sheffield United's recruitment in the summer looked on the face of it to be, okay, we're in the Premier League, but we're just going to play it slightly safer, because if we do go down, we've got then a good group of players that can get us out the league. January come and Sheffield United are, top 10. They think, right, well, let's have a go, because it looks like we're going to stay in the league. So let's have a go. That's when you buy, we saw the sign at Sander Berger, Restos. They brought in Severovic, barely got a look in. I think they bought Jack Robinson as well, who, that's the interesting one for me, Jack Robinson, because left-sided kind of player. I think he'd played at centre-half when he was at Forest, but came through at Liverpool as a left-back. So it was almost covering two bases with one signing. So you kind of look at it and go, right, that's fairly smart. Hasn't done it at all. I think he's barely played. So it's either it's down to injuries or manager doesn't quite trust him. But I'd always say that Jack Robinson's more of a left back. I wouldn't say he's a wing back, and I wouldn't say he's a left-sided centre back. But I think they've tried, like I say, to cover bases there with that particular signing. And then you come into this season, and it's been an absolute shambles. Like who ever sanctioned a deal to get Aaron Ramsdale for I think it was between 16 and 18 million.
Wow.
Needs their head testing because he's the worst goalkeeper in the league, and he's up there with one of the worst that I've seen. Genuinely, he's awful. Like me being a Spurs fan, probably the worst goalkeeper that I've seen at Tottenham is Aurelio Gomez. I'm putting Aaron Ramsdale in that category, right? Because he's absolutely awful. I mentioned before about goalkeepers producing a big save when you're under the cosh. Ramsdale doesn't do that. Doesn't do it at all. Like, he's awful. I don't know what stats that any scout or data analyst, recruitment analyst or whatever got from Ramsdale, just even last season with him at Bournemouth. But it's awful. Awful. Like, he went into a fairly settled Bournemouth back line, and then Bournemouth went down because they were conceding too many goals. I know it probably chopped and changed because Bournemouth had a lot of injuries at the back, but that was a settled back line at Bournemouth, if you like, with players that had established themselves as Premier League players. And they went down. Like, I know there was rumours, obviously, that Eddie Howe fell out with a lot of senior players at Bournemouth, and stuff. So that could be why Ramsdale got his chance. But how he was keeping a goalkeeper like Asmir Begovic out of the team, I've got no idea. But Aaron Ramsdale's awful. I even had somebody trying to convince me that he was half decent. I said, mate, he's horrific. Yeah, I mean, if I look at a couple of incidents from Sunday's game, the first goal that Tottenham score, I don't know where he's going, because Son, in swinging corner from Son, Ramsdale's trying to come out and punch it. I'm telling you now, if he stays at home, he saves it. Serge Aurier's not even the biggest player on the pitch. All right, I know you can look at that and go, well, why isn't the player marking Aurier getting across him? But honestly, Ramsdale's trying to come out and punch it, and it's like, stay at home. If you stay at home, you save it because of where the ball ends up. But he's a good 2 or 3 yards off his line and away from proceeding. Like, and I'm just like, what are you doing? I think there was one kick out that he tried to do. He fell on his backside as well. And yeah, I think there was also an incident. Son got played in behind, and he's come flying out for it and nearly gave away a penalty. And I'm like, just stay at home, please. Just stay at home again. Like, you don't need to come out. Son's going absolutely nowhere. He's going away from goal. You know, you got your defender there. You know, let him deal with it. Honestly, Ramsdale's awful. And then whose idea was it to buy Ryan Brewster for 24 million? Again, no idea. It's almost as if Sheffield United are trying to play Football Manager, and they get the one gem of a signing, but then they have 5 or 6 that are just horrific. Like, they're just bad. But yeah, Brewster, all right, he had a really good record in the Championship, 1 in 2, I believe, was his strike rate at Swansea.
Yeah.
So if that's enough to sanction a £24 million move, then geez, we're going into, completely different times recruitment wise and into the market then, if that's the case. It's been an interesting one. I was having a conversation with my dad about it, and I don't think they've found, obviously with O'Connell, not found that for left-footed centre-back. They've not found it with Lundstrom either, because there was a lot of talk that he might move on with his contract situation. So they've not found that sort of box-to-box kind of player, because I think Sanderberg was more of a deep-lying playmaker, if you like. So he would probably replace somebody like Fleck or Norwood. But I think what's happened with their recruitment has just been so hit and miss. It's ridiculous. Like, Luke Freeman's now at Forest, because he didn't get a look in. They bought him Ravel Morrison on a free. Forgot to mention him. He's now another free agent because he didn't cut it in Holland. Listen, I'm not saying every signing has to work out for you. If it did, then fantastic. But I just think that with Sheffield United's recruitment, they've got a set style and a set way of playing, yet the majority of their signings haven't complemented it. Obviously, the strikers like Moussa, McBurney, they have, because they play two up top, so you can see why they've perhaps brought in two strikers, and I think they had Billy Sharp and Leon Clark as their front two at one point. So they're aging centre forward, so you can see why they've done that. But yeah, I think what they've done is they've wasted a lot of money on players, and it just hasn't worked. So yeah, their recruitment definitely needs a sort out. I'm half surprised that they haven't done anything this January as of yet. But given the circumstances with the pandemic and stuff, I can again see why perhaps they haven't. Obviously, they're not getting that match day money, that match day revenue from fans coming in. Do I think they've missed their fans as well? Yes, massively. Because I think in games sometimes where it's been a bit tight, fans just give you that little bit of an extra boost and that extra lift just to get it over the line. So, the games where they are perhaps losing a 1-0 or a 2-1, it might end up being a draw. And or they see that Sheffield United are perhaps having a spell in a game where they are drawing, and then they get behind the team, and then all of a sudden they nick a goal out of absolutely nothing. So yeah, I can see why they haven't necessarily gone gung ho at it, but at the minute it looks like off the face of it that they are accepting almost that they've gone down, or that they'll turn it round. When in truth, they need to do a bit better with their recruitment. I can see the lines of thinking perhaps with Ampadu, Bogle and Max Lowe, because Chris Basham is 32, 33, I believe, somewhere around there. So again, somebody that's potentially aging, so you would want against a bit of cover there. Jayden Bogle is just sort of, I wouldn't say broke into that Sheffield United side, but he's just started to get a bit more of a regular football in there. It was a almost like a top performer in the Championship for right fullbacks, and a good another young English right back. We could have a whole 11 on those, I think. Yeah. And Max Lowe, again, I can understand, had a decent time at Derby. I think he also was on loan at Aberdeen as well at one point and did okay there. And then with Enda Stevens being again sort of 32, they're sort of planning for to phase him out. I think at some point, it's just a case of when. But I think by and large they've spent a lot of money on players that just haven't worked, and Ramsdale and Brewster are the main two that spring to mind on that.
You mentioned those two. Just a fun fact: they spent 56 million last summer, and they weren't able to offload any players for a fee. The rest was sold for like free transfers, loans. They weren't able to sell anybody for a transfer fee, which is remarkable. You mentioned Aaron Ramsdale as well, because he was in your overrated 11 in last week's episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, they spent 56 million. Another fact, you mentioned Dean Henderson being out. Obviously, you mentioned Aaron Ramsdale. Dean Henderson last season prevented 7 to 9 expected goals for Sheffield last season.
There you go. So that, if you equate that then to points, that could be, again, the example I was saying where it could be, a 1-1 where if Henderson doesn't make that save, that's probably a 2-1. Or, if it's a 1-0 at that time to the opposition, Henderson makes that save, and then Sheffield United perhaps may go down the other end and nick it and make it 1-1 or something like that. Whereas, I could be here all day talking about how bad Aaron Ramsdale is, honestly. I just...
In terms of, obviously, we talked about recruitment. Before I follow up, I think I wanted to get your opinion on. You said that Sheffield United have kind of accepted that they're going to go down and maybe turn it around and rebuild next year in the Championship. With recruitment obviously not, being hit and miss, what do you think now that means for the academy? Do you think it's a route that Chris Wilder should take to look at? You mentioned one of the young players right back coming up for Sheffield United. Do you think that's a route that maybe they should look at? Because I mentioned them spending 56 million. Who knows if they're going to recoup that kind of money in the summer with certain players leaving? Do you think that an academy route is an option to go down?
I think as well, probably why they haven't spent anything in this January is the fact that they didn't get anything in for the players that they sold in the summer, as you just mentioned. I think that is a massive thing because, okay, you're spending 50 odd million to bring players in, but what about the ones that you need to shift? Like, you've got to try and get something for those. Like, even if you'd have done that in January, where there's 6 months left on their contract, for example, you might be able to roll that money over into this season's budget. So yeah, I think, like I say, they're pretty. It looks like on the face of it, they're expecting to go down, and that they will rebuild in one way or another. I think they'll, there's some players there, unless they want to stay. I think they've got a squad capable of doing okay in the Championship. It just depends on, obviously, if the players want to stay, if the agents get involved and start touting moves elsewhere. I mentioned Sander Berger earlier. He would probably be the first one that they would look at and go, okay, we've gone down. Does he want to, if we sell him, how much would we get for him? If we loan him out, what's the financial ramifications of that? But I think if you put yourself in the shoes of another club, are there many players from the Sheffield United side that you would necessarily take a punt on and try and buy? Probably not.
Yeah.
So, like I say, with that, then they've got the nucleus of their squad that have that experience of being in the Premier League. I think you're seeing it a little bit with Norwich at the moment. Obviously, they didn't spend. I think they spent about. I don't even think they spent that much when they were in the Premier League last season. Went down. Obviously, sold Jamal Lewis to Newcastle for I think it was only 12 million, but he was linked to Liverpool for 20. They sold Ben Godfrey for 22 million, I believe. And then they've just sort of taken that financial hit of being out of the Premier League, sold a couple of players, and then just had faith, kept with the manager as well, because they could have chopped him. But now they're up the top end of the Championship again, and it looks like that again they could get promoted. I know there's obviously a long way to go in the season, but the way that they're going at the moment, they've really found some form, Norwich. So, do you look at it and go, right, we would want to be a bit like Norwich, or even Watford and Bournemouth kept a nucleus of their Premier League squads when they went down, and again they're both sort of up the top end of the Championship. So you would hope then if they are going to accept it, that they are going to go down, right, let's build for next season. Is the academy that particular route? I'm not 100% sure. Don't know if there's too many sort of young players bursting through. I think one made his debut against Palace recently, but I think that the Sheffield United squad, there was some. I think there might have been some COVID cases, or as well as having a few injuries as well. So that's almost why he got his chance. But if you look at the academy at Sheffield United, they have produced some players, but I don't think it's been very consistent in terms of churning players out. And I think the last one probably to come through was David Brooks, who's now at Bournemouth. Really, really good player, a player that I quite like as well. I think he's brilliant. Before then, you're probably looking at it, Harry Maguire. Then before then, it's probably Kyle Walker and Kyle Norton. So, difficult one for Sheffield United, because I don't know if they've got the structure there within the academy to look to bring some players through.
And they were halfway through the season. I think most teams have now played 19 games. So we're obviously heading into the second half of the season. To finish off, in terms of Sheffield United, what do you think needs to change? Because there's, like I said, they're 11 points off of 18th. So Burnley, who are currently just outside the drop zone. What do you, like? That's 4 wins. They could get 4 wins in the next 19 games. But what do you think needs to change for them to potentially salvage this season
not
head down?
I think the simple answer is just win more football matches. Really, I think did they try and go back to basics, and did they try and go back to almost doing what they did before and do what they did that served them so well? Now, I know from a personnel perspective, as I've spoken about a lot, it might not happen. So then if that's the case, they might just have to find a slightly different way of playing. Instead of perhaps having more possession in their third of the pitch, just go a bit more direct, look to cause other teams more problems. I think there's a few cases for some personnel changes. Like I think McGoldrick, I think his age is catching up with him now. I think he's 32, but he looks like a striker that is coming towards the end of his career. Instead of actually, he's probably got 1-2 more seasons left. But it looks like it's alarming how much it looks like he's coming sort of towards the end of, it's almost like he's got a year left or he's just going to carry on for that extra year and then it's, call it a day. So, obviously with injuries, you never know who's available and who's not. Do they try and get McBurney and Mousse on the same pitch and try and forge a bit more of a partnership with those two, which I don't think they did last season, because I think it was like McGoldrick or Mousse and McGoldrick or McBurney. So I think it's more personnel changes rather than tactical tweaks. But I think, I think what for Sheffield United, what they've got to try and do is just make sure that they don't go down with a record points total, because I think that would just then be, that would be written in the history books. Obviously, I think they're already in there for one of the longest winless runs in the Premier League. Obviously, their only win is against Newcastle. Their first actual win of the season coming against Bristol Rovers in the Cup, a couple of weeks ago. So yeah. I think that's, just I know it's a bit of a cliche, Gale cliche, but one game at a time and just focus on the next game. But I think perhaps just getting back to those basics, and even if it's just showing the players a bit of a motivational video on some of the stuff that they did last season, it might ignite something in them to be, like it might just get them going again and being like, right, okay, well, we can do it because we did it last season against these opponents that we're playing now, pretty much. So yeah, look, I think Chris Wilder's always been positive. I think he strikes me as quite a positive person. And of course, he believes he's the man that's gonna turn it around. If it wasn't Chris Wilder, if it wasn't the fact he's a Sheffield United fan, if it wasn't the fact he brought them up from League One, would he have gone by now? More than likely. So listen, I think the board are sticking by him. The players, they don't look like they're not playing for him. I just think that they're just in this bad rut and this bad run of form that they just can't seem to get out of. Obviously players don't like losing games, but I think sometimes you can accept that you're going to lose a couple of games here and there. But I think it's just when it's become one, it's then gone 2, 3, and it's just snowballed and avalanched and just can't seem to get going again. So I think, yeah, just perhaps going back to basics, and perhaps going a bit more direct might suit Sheffield United a bit more. I know it's not what the purists kind of want. Obviously, we all want lovely attacking football and things like that. But as someone said to me recently, there's more than one way to have your steak. So yeah, I think that's probably what I would suggest looking at it from a complete outsider's point of view and stuff.
I was going to follow up and ask you, do you think Chris Wilder should stay or go? But I think you mentioned at one point early in the podcast that you think he's still the right man for the job, and you just mentioned that the board back him. But so Sheffield United this season, do you think they stay or do you think they go down?
I think they're gone. Like I look at when teams concede, or if they concede, and every time I've watched Sheffield United this season, when they've conceded, their heads are dropping. It's like, oh, here we go again. But you know, when you've got Aaron Ramsdale in that, you're bound to concede quite a few, as Sheffield United are finding out. So yeah, but they look deflated. They don't look. There's nobody there that's kind of going, right, hey boys, come on, like just keep going, keep doing what we're doing, and whatnot. There was a point in the game on Sunday against Tottenham where it looked like they were getting into the game. You know, especially, and then they nicked a goal, and then after they scored, they had the little spell, and sort of in and around that goal as well. But they just didn't make the most of it. I think they've got to do that a bit more if they are to stay up. It's a tough ask. I don't know if the gap is too much at this stage. I don't know if they're just too cut adrift to stay. Listen, if they do it, it's up there with, you know, one of the greatest escapes, you know, from in years gone by as well. You look at Portsmouth and West Brom, you know, certainly in the Premier League, those are the main two that spring to mind from great escapes. Even Fulham, you know, those three teams all look dead and buried. And you know, they managed to turn it around. So, but they've got a massive task, because I think at least with certainly Fulham, yeah, they were down there, but there was almost something that you could hang on to, you know, that you thought, okay, they might get it. I think they recruited smartly in this January window, or in the January that they had before. And I think, you know, I wasn't expecting transfer window to be open, Sheffield United signing 6 players, you know, signing players left, right and centre, but very strange to see a club down there fighting relegation, cut adrift, and then not addressing that particular situation. Very strange, but I get that it's, you know, with the season that it is, you know, with the financial losses that clubs are incurring now, I do get it from a business perspective, but at the same time, will fans accept it? Probably not. Will Sheffield United fans accept not spending in this window, if it means they go down, have a year in the Championship, and then come back up? So they have that parachute payment as well, and then they just come back up and almost boss the Championship again. You know, that's probably a question without an answer. So yeah, but I think as a fan of, you know, if you're a football fan, you don't want to see your team go down. Of course not. But if it means that perhaps potentially the club might be better in the long run, you might have to take a bit of a hit to then come back stronger. As I mentioned, Burnley did it as well, and obviously now they've been taken over, because I think as well, if Burnley were a bit of a yo-yo club, like for example West Brom been dubbed with that tag, you know, would Burnley have been taken over? Probably not, because there's not that, you know, security, if you like, for a potential investor. You know, that like, right, okay, we know that you're going to be a Premier League club, but because Burnley have consistently stayed in the Premier League for a few years, I think it's made any kind of takeover a bit more attractive. So yeah, do I see Sheffield United staying up? Probably not, unfortunately. But you know, last season they were a massive breath of fresh air to everybody in the league. And yeah, like you mentioned earlier, is it that second season syndrome? Perhaps, but this is very drastic. So yeah, I think the drastic nature in it. I know I mentioned earlier didn't have the best project restart, but then you kind of park it and then go, right, new season, let's go. Let's run with it and let's go hit it, if you like. But yeah, this has been probably the hardest drop off in comparisons of seasons between two seasons that I've certainly seen. So yeah, I think unfortunately Sheffield United look kind of dead and buried, really.
Well, let's just wait and see what
Yes.
happens. You mentioned some great examples in terms of great escapes, and I personally love a great escape. I always root for the underdog. So yeah, it is a shame with what happened last season. You mentioned the drop off being, I think that for me, I agree with you in terms of the biggest drop off I've seen in terms of the amount. I think they garnered 50, 54 points. They garnered 54
Mm.
points last They only have 5. That's a mass. That's nearly 50. That is, yeah. We'll just wait and see. But I personally think they'll also go down too. So, thank you, Wes, for your opinion, your insight. Before we go, as you know, me being the host is always going to be a little bit up my sleeve to test your knowledge. So there is another quiz for an episode hosted by Nelson. So for those of you tuning in at home, if you'd like to join us, feel free to get a pen and paper. I've got 10 questions ready for Wes. Feel free to join and let's see how much you get compared to Wes. Wes, are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Great. So this quiz is on the topic of what we've done today, Sheffield United and also Chris Wilder. So we'll begin with question number 1.
Mm-hmm.
So Wes, where is Chris Wilder's hometown?
Sheffield.
I've got three options, but it seems like you've gone straight in.
Yeah, dived in 2-footed straight away.
For those people at home, I have 3 options. You've got A, Leeds, you've got B, Sheffield, or you've got C, Bournemouth. Wes has gone with Sheffield B, and that is the correct answer. So Chris Wilder, Sheffield lad himself. But yeah, the answer is B, Sheffield. We've got another multiple choice for question number 2. How many times has Chris Wilder as manager been promoted? Is it A, 3 times, B, 5 times, or C, 4 times?
Oh, that's tough. That's a tough one. I'm going to go with 4.
So we mentioned earlier he had stints at Bury, Oxford, Northampton, and Sheffield. For those of you who put B5, that is the wrong answer. Anybody who put C along with Wes 4 times, that is correct.
Yeah.
Chris Wilder has been promoted 4 times. 1 with Oxford, once with Northampton, and twice with Sheffield United. So just dropped my little quiz book there. But yeah, 4 times. The answer is C, 4. Well done. Question number 3. I mentioned earlier in the episode, for those of you listening, that Sheffield United last summer spent 56 million. So Wes, somebody joined Sheffield United that summer and became their club record signing. Who was that signing?
Was it Mousse?
It wasn't. It's not Musa. I can give you another try.
Oh no!
Their record signing. It's record signing. Sheffield United club record.
So is it off the? It's, okay, yeah. It's got to be Brewster.
Correct. The answer is Rhian Brewster.
Yeah.
Club record signing, 24 million. For those of you put Rhian Brewster, that is also correct. I obviously allowed Wes another game. Technically got that wrong, but you know, test that knowledge out. So well done to anybody else who put Rhian Brewster. Question number 4. Who is currently Sheffield United's top scorer this season with 5 goals?
David McGoldrick.
That is correct. David McGoldrick is the correct answer. 5 goals. Maybe you mentioned recruitment. Maybe another thing I personally feel like they need is a reliable goal scorer. I don't think you can rely on someone like McGoldrick. I can't remember how many Mousse got last season, but I think it was below 10. So, you know, you mentioned someone like Danny Ings when Southampton were in a bad run of form, scored over 20 goals. So I think that's one thing Sheffield United should look at. So question number 4, the answer is David McGoldrick, top scorer. Question number 5. How many losses have Sheffield United accumulated this season?
Car, hold on.
No multiple choice, just a random number that they've played 19 games. How many have they lost out of that?
15.
Oh, I think you missed your sweet 16, son. The answer is 16 losses.
Damn.
16 losses, just 1. That was a very good guess. Very good guess. For anybody who put 16 losses, well done. That is another correct answer for you. But unfortunately for Wes, he got that answer wrong. The answer is 16 losses. Moving on. Question number 6. This one is a general Premier League question, but it relates to Sheffield United's current situation. What is the Premier League record with the lowest number of points in the season?
I believe that it goes to Derby County with 11, and the season was 07-08, I believe.
Wow. If I had to offer bonus points, then my man Wes would have got all bonus points correct. Well done. That team, the record is 11 points. If anybody put down 11 points, you can tick that correct for you. But some bonus bits that Wes put in there. Derby County are the team that accumulated the lowest amount of points, and they did it in the 07-08 season. That was spot on. We're talking 180 darts special. Well done. So, question number 7, multiple choice. What year were Sheffield United formed? Is it A, 1889, B, 1806, or C, 1905?
A.
That is correct. A, 1889 is the year that Sheffield United were formed. I think one of the oldest clubs in English football. So whoever put 1889, well done, that is correct. We move on to question number 8. This is not a multiple choice question, but how many First Division / Premier League titles have Sheffield United won in their lifetime?
Oh, this will be interesting. I don't even know that they potentially have, but if they have, it must have been a very, very small number. I'm going to go with 1.
Wow, something's on with you today. That is the correct answer. The answer is 1. They've only won 1 First Division title. They haven't won anything since the Premier League was formed in 1992, but yes, 1 title, First Division title. Well done for those who put that correct. We've got 2 questions left before we add up the scores. Where's question number 9? What is the name of Sheffield United's ground?
Bramall Lane.
Correct. Bramall Lane is the correct answer. For those who put Bramall Lane, that is correct. Anything other than that, then yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. But Bramall Lane is the correct answer. You ready for the last question? I think you might like this one.
Go for it. Hit me with it.
Last question. Question number 10, guys. Listen along. This one's a bit of a tricky one for those Premier League purists. I think you might enjoy this question. So, in 1992, when in the inaugural Premier League season, which Sheffield United player scored the first ever Premier League goal?
Oh, here we go. Here we go. So, as you mentioned, Premier League purists, if you are not a fan of Premier League years, then, you know, what are you doing with your life? So, the answer is Brian Deane.
Well done. The answer is Brian Deane. First ever player to score the first Premier League goal. The fixture was on August the 15th, 1992, against the team who's won the most Premier League titles in Manchester United. The game ended 2-1. Deane scored 2 that game. So well done for you who got Brian Deane. Let's just quickly add up Wes's scores as I get back to him. So he had Sheffield United, question 1 correct, 4. The transfer one, unfortunately, got that one wrong.
I'll allow that one.
Got McGoldrick correct, yeah. Question number 6 for anybody. Record for the lowest points was 11. Wes got that correct. Question number 7, what year was the club formed? That was A, 1889. How many First Division titles? I don't know how Wes got that one, but that was 1. That was correct. Ground, Bramall Lane, and Brian Deane. So, Wes, I can reveal to you that you got a total of 8 out of 10. Well done, 80%.
Decent.
Which was, I think, your last score as well on the other Coaches Insight episode we did for Frank Lampard. So that was 8%. So seems like you've got a consistent score there. Let's see if you can, get another consistent score, even beat that score. So well done. Everybody else, check your scores at home. If you did beat Wes, congratulations. If you didn't, don't worry. There's another quiz further down along the line for WM32 Football Podcast. That is it for today's episode. Thank you for joining myself and Wes as we just talked about everything Sheffield United and Chris Wilder. If you did enjoy this episode, please leave a like on our YouTube channel and please subscribe to us as well. Also follow us on our other social media platforms at WM32 Football. Football, yes. And don't forget, I mentioned earlier, the shop is now live and direct, as AJ Tracy would say. Feel free, wm32football.com/shop to get your merchandise. Thank you, Wes, for today's episode. Thank you. And thank you for everyone for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time.
No problem. See you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.